Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be starting with the third lecture, and in context to the previous lecture where I had been discussing about human resource planning process, I would further analyze a few more aspects related to human resource planning process. And in this, there is an important question always comes to in mind that who is responsible for this process of planning. And of course, the answer usually comes that it is the top level executives who are responsible for this human resource planning, as it is considered to be one of the most important factors influencing the success of any organization. So, in any organization, the human resource division, in consultation with other corporate heads, usually prepares the plan, and they have this responsibility as well as the accountability for manpower aspects of various divisions on their respective heads in the organization. So, for organizations wide forecasting and planning, these executives, they should, or the higher authorities, they should undertake their own appraisal of future needs in such a way as to provide a concrete basis. So the human resource division of any organizations offers counsel and advice to various divisional heads, and coordinate the various manpower estimates from time to time. Professor Gisler outlined the responsibilities of human department in respect to manpower planning. So, assisting, counseling operating managers to plan and set the organizational objectives becomes important. Collecting and summarizing human resources data, keeping long run objectives and broad organization interests in mind, monitoring and measuring performance against a standard, and keeping top management informed about it, and thus providing proper research basis for effective manpower and organizational planning. So we can say that the process of human resource planning, it starts with constructing the organizational objectives and strategies, and in this process, both external as well as internal assessments of HR needs and supply sources can be done after the forecasting has been developed. So, the key to assessing, or the key to assess any internal human resources, is about having a solid and complete information which can be retrieved or which is accessible through human resource information system. And once this assessment has been done, forecasting is developed to identify the mismatch between the HR supply and the HR demand, if there are any, and also to understand the shortages or the surplus of the workforce. So the HR strategies and plans are there to address the imbalances. Both short term and long term plans accordingly must be developed. So this is again a visual representation of the human resource planning process. There are two aspects, that is external and internal environment, and the strategic planning, which talks about further leads into the human resource planning, forecasting human resource requirements, comparing requirements and availability, forecasting human resource availability, demand supply surplus of the workers, shortage of the workers, then what action has to be taken, and then there is restricted hiring, reduced hours, early retirement, layoff, downsizing, or if there's a shortage of workers, then recruitment and selection. Environmental scanning, or when you talk about the first aspect, this is very important and crucial, because this helps the HR planners identify and anticipate sources of problems, threats, and opportunities that should drive the organization's strategic planning. So both external competitors, labor markets, legal environment, as well as internal aspect, that is the strategy, technology, culture, environmental scanning becomes necessary for the effective HR planning. I give you an example. Amazon closed a large and costly customer service in Seattle despite good growth projections, as the study and research said that they could not meet their growth projections with a far less costly customer center in India. So that is, it becomes very important that you have to analyze the external environment, what it is. Then there is a labor demand forecast. It projects how business needs will affect affect the HR needs using methods such as trend analysis, simple and multiple regression analysis. So the labor shortages are preventing entrepreneurs, for expanding their businesses, and such shortages makes the planning more difficult. Then there are certain aspects when we look into this, the qualitative methods as well as the quantitative methods. When we talk about the qualitative methods or the quantitative methods, it is actually the labor demand forecast. Suppose it projects. How business needs will affect HR needs using qualitative methods. It projects how business needs will affect HR needs using the qualitative methods, that is the Delphi, nominal, and then quantitative methods, that is trend analysis, simple and multiple regression. So the labor shortages are preventing entrepreneurs from expanding the business, and such shortages makes the planning more difficult. Then there's the qualitative methods. Now in these methods, the Delphi technique is very popular. The experts go through various rounds of forecasting estimates, and but no face-to-face meeting of the experts takes place, as an intermediary is involved. So experts takes at presenting forecast statements and assumptions, and the intermediary passes on the forecast and assumptions to others. So this process continues till a final conclusion on the forecast is reached. Then the quantitative methods, there are other techniques based on assumptions that the future is an extrapolation from the past, and this trend analysis is one of the techniques which incorporates certain business factors and a productivity ratio. And to understand this trend analysis, there are certain points which has to be kept in mind. First, finding the appropriate business factor that relates to the size of the workforce. Then plotting historical record of the factor in relation to the size of the workforce. Then compute the productivity ratio. Determine the trend, make necessary adjustments, the use of appropriate business factor, which is critical to the success of any forecasting or trend analysis. Then we talk about, the labor supply forecast. The labor supply, whereas when the labor demands forecast projects HR needs, the labor supply forecast projects resource availability. So through this forecast, one can come to know the firm's current as well as projected competency. So supply forecasts are typically broken down into two categories: external and internal supply. The external supply, if you look into the external supply, or rather it is important to understand both the aspect, that is the internal as well as external supply. The internal supply consists of those individuals and jobs currently available within the firm. Information on person is maintained in human resource information system, and data from this system are used to make projections into the future based on the current trends, whereas the external supply consists of those individuals in the labor force who are potential recruits of the firm, and the whole country or even the world may be the relevant labor market for highly skilled jobs, whereas for unskilled jobs the labor market is the local community. Then we need to understand the gap analysis. So gap analysis is used to merge the forecast of labor demand and supply, and this process identifies the potential shortages or surplus of skills, employees and competencies. So in addition to this, the HR planners can analyze the environmental forecast with supply and demand forecast for evaluating the firm's preparation in pursuing the different business scenarios in the context of business objectives. Then the action programming, it is the final step of HR planning, and it takes the adopted solution and lays down the sequence of events that needs to be executed to realize the plan. So the purpose of this step is to make certain that the decisions taken in the previous 4 steps are brought into action. And then lastly is the control and evaluation. Control and evaluation monitor the effectiveness of human resource plans over times. Deviations from the plans identified and actions are taken. The extent to which human resource objectives have been attained is measured by the feedback from various outcomes. But this is again the three, in fact, we further looked into the environment, the planning process, which I had explained earlier, that the environment has to be taken, organization objectives and policies, there is a need, HR needs, and there are HR surplus forecast, programming, implementation, control and evaluation. So there's the three key elements of process are, if you look into the planning process as a whole, there are three important elements in the process, in the entire human resource planning process. First is forecasting the demand for labor, conducting a supply analysis, and then balancing supply and demand considerations. So the process of human resource planning consists of the following accurate step. First is about assessing what are the current human resources. Now, the first step of human resource planning is to assess the current status of the organization's human resource, which is an internal analysis that would include the inventory of employees and skill already available within the organization, and job analysis. And the assessment of human resources include HR inventory. This is again common method to assess the current status of the organization's resource. It prepares report on the basis of forms completed by employees and then checked by supervisors, which includes the list of employee, education, training, prior experience, current position, performance rating, salary rating, and specialized skills. So HR inventory helps HR planning for determining the skill, training and development program, and number of people and the number of people should be hired for future activities. So it can also provide crucial information for identifying current or future threat to the organization's ability to perform. So the assessment of the current status of HR is based on the following two important techniques, that is the human resource information system, which is the most effective technique to provide the current state of HR in the organization, and it is a method by which organization collects, maintains, analyze and report information on people on job. So HRIS is typically designed to fulfill the HRM information needs of the organization, and it includes the management of basic records, benefits administration, planning, skill inventories, training and development data. So performance appraisal and job evaluation information. Human resource information system, it facilitates both planning and identifying person for current transfer or promotion. The next is a succession planning. Now, succession planning is the process of identifying future managerial staffing needs and making plans and strategies for the development of managers to meet those future requirements. It focuses on the development of competent employees and takes the long-term view of the organization's human resource needs. So these techniques, fetch the information from HR inventory, specially expand the information of current performance, promotional ability, development needs, and take plans for long-term growth potential. It is directly directed to the human resource planning to help the organization for future needs of human resource management. Then there is the job analysis. Job analysis is one important part in the planning process because it helps in identifying the jobs and skills, abilities and responsibilities that are required for an individual to accomplish the task or job assigned. So it provides the complete information about the job and the qualification which is needed to accomplish the job. So this job analysis outcomes, a job description, job specification and job evaluation, which we will be discussing in detail in the future lectures. Then the analyzing the organizational process. So this is all about the planning process in a nutshell, which I am again trying to bring about the real actual picture, so that the organizational plan and strategies directs the whole activity of the organization, and it also determines the future human resource needs. So on the basis of total revenue anticipated, the organizations can attempt to establish the number and proper mix of human resource needed to reach this revenue. Therefore, there are various components in organizations' plans such as production plan, marketing plan, sales plan, plan for expansion, etc., which determines the activity of human resource management needed to achieve these objectives. So then forecasting HR demand, once the information about the current status of manpower is gathered and analyzed and human resource objectives are determined on this basis, future HR needs are forecasted, and HR forecasting will be done on the basis of job analysis and facilitate demand forecasting. So this step analyze the HR needs for future in terms of skill, values, capabilities with number of HR ultimately based on the organization's plan and strategies. Then supplying forecasting. No, supply forecasting, after having a complete information about the demand, this analyzes the source of human resource supply needed for future to ensure the availability at the right time and right place. So supply forecasting analyzed the HR inventory and determined the addition and reduction in human resources. So there are two sources of human resource supply available. First, it is the internal, and second, it is the external supply. So internal supply can be done through promotion, transfer, demotion, and external is done through new recruitment of employees from various sources. Again, when we discuss about recruitment and selection in further lectures, then there would be a clarity of these concepts. Then matching demand and supply of human resources. Now this is the last step, and it ensures the balance between the human resource department in the organization and supply in the market. So it results into the balance, shortage and overstaffing, or we can say that if the organization is in the stage of shortage, then demand is increased, and if overstaffing is predicted, then the HR should be transferred or can be cut or can cut the number of employees. So in this part, the HR manager should play a very vital role in analyzing and balancing the HR demand and supply, as well as the right action plan should be taken from it. So that was an important aspect of human resource planning process. Now, what are the factors which affects the human resource planning? There are few factors which I will be discussing in this part, like type and strategy of organization, organizational growth cycle and planning, environmental uncertainties, natures of job being filled, type and quality of forecasting information, and time horizons. Now, when we talk about type and strategy of organization, it determines the production process involved and the number and type of staff needed. So in addition, the strategic plan of the organization defines its HR needs, and manufacturing organizations are rather more complex than the service organization. So for example, a strategy of organic growth means that additional employees must be hired. Acquisitions and mergers mean that the organization will plan for the layoff, since merger create duplicate positions that can be handled more efficiently with fewer employees. Then organizational growth cycle and planning. Now, need for planning is felt, or rather it is required when an organization enters the growth stage. So mature organization experiences less flexibility and variability, and at this stage retirement and retrenchment are focused upon and growth slows down. So finally, in the declining stage, planning is also done for layoffs as well as retrenchment. Then outsourcing. Several organizations outsource part of their work to outside parties in case sufficient labor is not available. So outsourcing of non-critical activities through subcontracting determines the human resource planning. Then there are certain environmental uncertainties. HR managers, they work in a very unstable and unpredictable environment. Flexi timing, job sharing, layoffs, retirements are some of the programs carried out by the organizations for facing the uncertainty. So this could also affect the planning process, that any eventualities might create a hurdle or an obstacle in terms of when you are doing the inventory or when you are analyzing the demand and supply or doing any kind of future forecasting. Then the nature of jobs being filled. The HR manager, the planner, they must consider the nature of jobs being filled. What is the requirement? What is the job responsibility? What are the knowledge, skill? What kind of job has to be filled, and what are the requirements of the job? So it is easy to recruit, sometimes shop floor workers, but for hiring at a higher positions, a lot of efforts and sourcing is required. So the nature of job also is a very crucial part in the planning, that what kind of recruitment, in what manner recruitment has to be done, particularly based on the job description and specification of individual. So that would also vary, and the planners have to act accordingly. Then the type and quality of forecasting information. Now, this information is used to forecast personal needs, which originates from many sources. A population census is the primary source of information for any manpower planning. It gives the total count of the country's population, along with valuable statistics on the personal and economic characteristics of the presence, thus enabling future projections. So, other sources are job analysis, labor force sample surveys, establishment surveys, household surveys, industrial and agricultural surveys, labor market surveys, national economic development, and educational plans. Then time horizons. Companies operating in unstable environment, for example, in computer and software industry, planning has to be done for a short period, whereas for organizations where environment is much more stable, universities, colleges, planning can be done for a longer duration. So these are the certain factors which affect the human resource planning. Then what are the prerequisites? There are certain prerequisites for, if we have to ensure that the planning has been successful. There are certain, these are generalized criteria. These are not specific, and it may vary depending upon the organization's need, organization structure, organizations turnover and profitability. So there are a few requisites have been outlined in order to ensure that the human resource planning had been a success. HR planning, it must recognized as an integral part of the corporate planning, and the planner must be aware of the corporate objectives. So it is very important that the objectives and the goals are clearly, has been clearly outlined, and there shouldn't be any ambiguity. The vision, mission, in fact, the goals, objectives, aims, they should be in synchronization, so that when they are fulfilling or doing recruitment, or looking for the workforce, their needs and expectations and their objectives coincides with the corporate objectives. That the support of the top management is very essential. It is very important that the HR planner, he has hands free, or I would say he have some kind of autonomy and the decision making authority, so that he can recruit or he can plan accordingly. And for this, the top management, that is the managing director or maybe the CEOs, their support, their unconditional support, or their trust in the planner should be entrusted, so that they have a free hand in doing the planning and making inventories, and if the need arises, they can do the recruitment accordingly. So the support of the top management is essential for the planning purpose, because it helps to give a detailed analysis of the organization's current status and what would be the future course or direction which the organization tends to move. Then planning responsibilities should be centralized, so that coordination is there between different management levels. So it says that although the top management, they are responsible for the planning part, so it should not be decentralized, it should be centralized, because every department ultimately has to respond to the needs, expectations and the objectives which has been framed by the high authority. So it has to be centralized in order to bring about a proper coordination between different management. All the different departments, they should work in tandem they should have the same goals and objectives, higher, in order to achieve the the expected goals and objectives of the organization. So instead of decentralization, it is more properly, it should be centralized, so that coordination can be maintained. Then all the records of human resource department must be complete, updated, and readily available. So in order to make an inventory, if one has to make a workforce inventory, the human resource department, the records, the documentations of each and every employee has to be updated, is to be complete and easily available to do this human resource planning. So it becomes important again for human resource information system that whatever documents they have stored, the database they have created, it should be updated and it should be complete, so that they could have a full knowledge, complete knowledge about the current manpower, current manpower ratio, and they can do the projections based on that current manpower projections. Then the time horizon of the plan must be long enough to allow for any solution. So the time frame has to be a bit lengthy. It should be long-term strategies and planning should be done, so that if solutions can be also made if there are any uncertainties or any problems which may arise during the planning process or during the planning period. So it becomes important that the solutions are, it should be also flexible. When you talk about the time horizon, plan should be lengthy enough or should have a long-term strategy. It should also be flexible to make certain changes, to allow changes, and to look for any solutions if there are any problems. Then data collection analysis, techniques of data collection analysis, techniques of planning, and the plans themselves need to be constantly revised and improved in the light of experience. So in terms of, when you talk about changes which takes place, change is something which is permanent, and when you are doing the planning part, it should be constantly revised, monitored, so they based on the needs and expectations of the employees and the employers, the changes that might take place, external or internal changes within and outside the organization. So job analysis has to be done. What would be the strategies and techniques? As I said earlier, it should be more flexible and it should be permissible enough to allow changes which has to be made. That's why they should be revised and they should be improved for better results and for better efficiency. Now, there are four main drivers for human resource planning. These are the organizational. So, it is important. You also have to understand, when we commence the human resource planning process, one also has to understand on the main drivers of a workplace planning and any influence of these drivers on the human resource planning exercise. So, this is the organizational directions. Internal labor, external labor, and the business change. When you talk about the organization direction, it includes the organization plans, budget forecast, new technology, working practices, organizational culture, and reward system. So this is important when you commence or when you begin with the human resource planning part. Then the internal labor, which includes a determination of human resources profile by multi dimensions, gender, age, grade, occupations, length of service, and so on. Then identification of any internal management issues like retention, separation, promotion patterns, etc., and so on. Identifying potential area of workplace that are vulnerable to the current or future skill gaps, or to the current or future, then skill gaps, imbalances, and looking at the geographical issues that could also be a cause of any unidentified issue that could create any issue which could create any problems in future. So all of these factors have implications for recruitment and retention of our workforce across the organization. Then external labor, there are certain demographic changes which takes place, and these demographic change in potential workforce affects both the demand for services and workforce supply to fill the required vacancies or the vacant positions in the organization. And then you have the business change. So technological changes which are leading to changes in service, information delivery, way of functioning or working, and the skills needed in the workforce. So consequently, this will change the competencies for positions, and how recruitment is done, and how employees are hired and engaged for the current and future workforce. So these four main drivers are important in initiating, before initiating the planning process. There are five phases of human resource planning process. That is, analyzing what are the key human resource information needed, forecasting, again demand versus supply analysis, planning identification of strategy, implementing, executing new strategy, and then evaluating feedback on effective outcomes. I will stop here and I will continue with the five phases of human resource planning in the next lecture. Thank you.